Hello there everybody, I hope everybody's well. Just welcome everybody to this little video. I haven't made one since last week, and the reason I haven't made one was because I got sort of tied up in politically and economically what was going on in Ireland, because it's been moving at a hell of a pace over the last couple of days, and it kind of came to a big head on Friday. And in order to paint a little picture of what I'm doing about this video, we have to go back about 2 months, okay? And the way it is we have a deficiency between what the government, our government in Ireland can raise from taxation and what it spends. And the deficiency is approximately 20 billion every year. So in order to balance the books, in order to pay everybody, the government has to raise 20 billion euros somewhere. And how they do that is every month they go to the bond markets and they sell a load of Irish bonds. And about 2 months ago, actually it's 6 weeks ago, but it doesn't matter, we had our last issuance of bonds about 2 weeks ago, and the previous issuance was about a month before that, so about 6 weeks ago. We went to the marketplace and all the Irish newspapers told us that the bonds were oversubscribed. Now what happens is there's a couple of types of bonds that the state wants to sell, and the primary type that the state wants to sell are called medium and long-term bonds. They're 10-year and longer bonds. That's what the state wants to sell. Alright. And what happened was over the last year our interest rates have been going up and up and up as our economic problems worsened. Okay, so about 6 weeks ago we were offering about 5 3/4 or 6%, 5 3/4% we were offering. I think it was 5.75, something around about that, for 10-year bonds. And what happened was we were told in the Irish newspapers that the bond issuance was oversubscribed. Now you have to do a little bit of a jump here, and I have to tell you a little bit of information. The information is I have a contact and he works in a newspaper in London. I don't really want to say more than that. It's not a mainstream newspaper. It's not something like the Daily Telegraph or the Observer or anything like that. It's not like that, okay? It's a private newspaper. And he's worked in it for, he's an Irishman, and he's worked in it, he's from the north of Ireland, and I know him quite well, know him and his family quite well, and he's worked in it for a long time, and he's quite well disposed towards me, and he would consider himself to be primarily an Irishman. And I got involved in a brief discussion with him about, just after this is about 6 or 7 weeks ago, and he told me, he said, JB, he said, contrary to what you've been told in the Irish newspapers, that bond issuance that your country did, that our country did, Ireland, a couple of days back, he said it was a disaster, and the European Central Bank had to come in and buy up the bonds. A lot of it was, there was no bidding on a lot of the bonds, and the European Central Bank, because the European Central Bank monitor all the international bond sales out of Europe, and what they do is, if any of them are about to fail, they step in and they buy them, because it's like 2 billion, it's not a huge amount of money. So I don't know what they bought, but they bought the bulk of them. So say it was a billion and 1.2 billion or whatever, it doesn't matter, okay? So anyway, he told me that, and I sort of thought he was, well, I didn't see any, like, I mean, you know, they're telling you in the Irish newspapers it was oversubscribed, and we've, you know, there didn't seem to be any problems. And then what happened was 2 weeks ago we had another bond sale. And immediately after it, he told me the same thing. He said, JB, that was worse again. He said, I know some of the bond guys, I know some of the brokers, and they told me it was a disaster. Nobody hardly bought any of it. They see Ireland as going the way of Greece, and they don't want, there's no point in buying risky bonds at the moment when they can buy gilt-edged ones, like the German and American bonds or the UK bonds that are real low, and do you know what I mean? Real low interest rates and have all the AAA ratings and all that. Okay, so they're not interested in buying Irish bonds. And again, I was kind of dubious about what he said. But then I read an extraordinary article, and the article was that the chairman of our central bank, a fellow called Patrick Honan, a professor of economics, he's out around the world selling Ireland. Now, why would you want to do that if your bonds are oversubscribed? If your bonds are, as what it said in the Irish papers, if they're oversubscribed, why would you want to be out running around China and running around Singapore and running around Hong Kong and running around Malaysia and all that, and like a begging bowl job, trying to get punters to buy your bonds? So anyway, the final card in the drama was played out last Friday. It was played out by our Minister of Finance. This is a man who has no experience in business whatsoever. He's a lawyer. He's from the Four Courts, the library, the law library in the Four Courts. That's his experience about business. He knows nothing about business. Those boys live all in a cocooned world down there. Okay? He knows all about politics. He's a leading Fianna Fáiler. He's a minister in a Fianna Fáil government. But he knows nothing about business, or how business is conducted, or what businessmen think, or whatever. And he knows nothing about that at all. He decided, through advice, he employs a crew called Citicorp to give him advice, and they advise him it'd be a good idea to get on and have a linear conference call with 256 brokers, bond brokers throughout the world. Now these are the guys who actually do the trading in the bond market on a day-to-day basis, and they've lots of clients, so they would have a big input with, you know, they'd be telling the clients what they feel and whatever, you know, the health about the market and what's trading and what's not, and what to them would be a good risk, and also they would have a good input with their various clients. Anyway, they started this conference call, and what they did, it was either deliberate or an accident. But instead of it being a linear call, a conference call, where it was just Brian Lenihan addressing these brokers, and the brokers were all separated, you know, there's no way of communicating. What happened was it ended up in an open conference call where all the brokers were able to talk to one another and able to talk to Brian Lenihan at the same time. So the whole thing degenerated into a debacle. And they were shouting things down the phone at Brian Lenihan like, short Ireland. In other words, dump Irish bonds. These are the brokers. These are the guys who are trading and buying and selling them. And then other ones were saying, if you come to the market again, we'll demand 10% interest from you. So the whole thing anyway ended up, it was a fiasco, and it ended up after about 10 or 15 minutes and had to be cancelled. So that was on Friday afternoon. And on Friday evening then, our state made an unprecedented statement to the world. We were no longer going back to the bond market. So the information I got from the paddy working in the UK was correct. I got that 2 months ago, and I chose not to believe it. But in future I'll listen a lot more to what these people tell me, because it's obvious the information we're getting fed in Ireland is just a pack of lies. Our country is in deep, deep, deep crises. We can no longer go to the bond market to raise any money. Our state has made a statement saying that we will have to wait until next year before we go back to the bond market. And what that really means is we're going to have to introduce the most draconian budget imaginable in December, because it has to get the imprimatur of the European Central Bank, this budget. This budget has to be signed off entirely by them so that they will stand behind us should we go to the international bond markets again. Because as sure as shooting, those same brokers made it clear to Brian Lenihan on Friday they will not be buying Irish bonds in future, and they'll not be telling their clients to buy Irish bonds. So we have to make sure that when we go to it again, that the European Central Bank is standing squarely behind us. And that will only happen when they sign off on every single thing that we do from now on. So it's not a question of when will the IMF or the European Central Bank. They have arrived. They are here. They are now standing over our Minister of Finance and the First Secretaries and all the senior management level within our finance ministry. And every single thing that we do here in Ireland will have to get the tick before we get any more money. Our sovereignty is gone. Our financial sovereignty is gone. Our real sovereignty, if you want to call it anything else, it might as well be gone as well too. We're running around the world with begging bowls to survive. That is our future now. And we're on the edge, as I say, of the most draconian budget that's imaginable. That requires more and more discussion. We don't have time for that today. But we have to discuss that over the next few days about what's going to happen and the effect that it's going to have on society at large. But I tell you, man, you could not make most of this up. It's truly, truly hard to believe. 2 years ago when I said all this would take place, I said it tongue-in-cheek. I didn't believe that we could have such incompetence, that we could have such morons running our state. These people should be all on charges of criminal negligence and criminal conspiracy, like it is in Iceland. Their Prime Minister's on a charge at the minute. But you know what'll happen in Ireland? They'll give them medals and a big fat pension.